Get your hands off that railing before I charge you with contempt." Sheriff Wade Harlan said it loud enough for every phone in the courtroom hallway to catch it. His hand clamped around the thin woman's arm just above the elbow, where her brown coat had already been patched twice. The woman did not fight him. That made it worse. She was small, tired, and quiet, with rain still drying at the hem of her skirt. In one hand she held a folded court notice. In the other, she held a child's blue hair ribbon, wound so tightly around her fingers that her knuckles had gone white. Behind her, a little girl in a church dress began to cry. "Please," the woman said, not to the sheriff, but toward the courtroom doors. "I was told I could speak before the order was signed." Sheriff Harlan smiled like he had been waiting all morning to prove a point. "You were told wrong." The hallway outside Courtroom 2 of the Clayton County Courthouse in Alder Creek, Georgia, was full enough to become an audience. Reporters had come for the town hall hearing on the county's new housing enforcement plan. Landlords stood along one wall. Church ladies sat with paper fans. A county commissioner checked his watch. 2 deputies pretended not to hear. And everyone watched Harlan drag a poor woman away from the door where her future was being decided without her. The little girl reached for her. "Mama!" That single word should have stopped him. It did not. Harlan yanked harder, and the woman stumbled. Something small slipped from inside her coat and struck the marble floor with a sound too sharp for paper. A sealed leather badge case. Not open, not displayed. Just a flat black case, old but well kept, with a narrow strip of red evidence tape across the seam. It slid under a bench and stopped against the polished heel of Judge Maribel Cross, who had stepped into the hallway at the wrong moment. The judge lowered her gaze. Harlan saw it too, and for 1/2 second his smile changed. Then he recovered. "Another prop," he said, louder now. "You people always bring props when the truth doesn't work." The woman's face did not change, but her fingers tightened around the blue ribbon. A young clerk named Ruth Bell stood frozen near the copier, a stack of files pressed against her chest. She had seen evictions. She had seen angry men. She had seen mothers beg. But she had never seen someone look at a sealed badge case the way this woman did. Like it was not power. Like it was a grave. Harlan bent, picked it up with 2 fingers and held it away from him as if it were dirty. "Is this supposed to scare me?" The woman lifted her eyes. No. Her voice was so calm that the people nearest her stopped whispering. Harlan's jaw flexed. He had built his whole career on making calm people break, on knowing who could be shoved, who could be embarrassed, who could be made small in front of neighbors until they signed whatever paper was placed before them. Today, the paper waiting inside Courtroom 2 was an emergency order that would clear 6 families from the old Mill Road duplexes before Friday morning. The county called it safety enforcement. The landlords called it progress. The mothers on Mill Road called it losing the only roofs they could afford. And Harlan called it easy. Until this woman arrived, until she asked to speak. Until she said one sentence at the clerk's window that made Ruth Bell quietly stop typing. "I'm here for the record you sealed." Now the sheriff had her by the arm in front of half the town, and the sealed case in his other hand, and a judge watching from 5 feet away. He should have given it back. Instead, he crossed the line. He peeled at the red tape. A sound moved through the hallway. Not a gasp exactly, more like every witness suddenly understood they were watching something that could not be undone. The woman took 1 step forward. "Sheriff Harlan," she said, still quiet, "do not open that." The warning landed wrong on him. Men like Harlan heard fear as permission and boundaries as insults. His face hardened, and he lifted the case higher so the phones could see it. "You don't give orders in my courthouse." "It isn't your courthouse." That did it. His hand shot out, caught her shoulder, and shoved her back against the wall hard enough for the framed fire evacuation map to rattle. The little girl screamed. Ruth dropped 1 file. Judge Cross said the sheriff's name, but not firmly enough. Harlan leaned close to the woman. "You walk in here dressed like a charity case, wasting county time, Waving around some fake badge and think I won't put you in cuffs?" The woman breathed once through her nose. Then her gaze moved past him toward the far end of the hallway where two men in dark suits had just entered through security without removing their coats. Harlan had not noticed them yet. No one had. For the first time, the sheriff's thumb paused on the tape. A camera light blinked. The judge's hand drifted to the phone in her pocket. The little girl went silent, hiding her face against Ruth Bell's skirt. And in that strange stillness, the whole hallway seemed to tilt toward the black leather case in the sheriff's hand. Because whatever was sealed inside it had not been brought there to impress anyone. It had been brought there to expose someone. And by the end of that hearing, Sheriff Wade Harlan would lose more than his temper. He would lose the one thing he had spent 16 years protecting. But to understand why a woman everyone mistook for powerless walked into that courthouse with a sealed federal badge hidden in her coat, we have to go back 8 days. 8 days earlier, Lena Mercer woke before the alarm because the radiator in apartment 3B had started knocking again. It was still dark over Alder Creek, Georgia, a mill town that had learned to call every loss a renovation. The old brick textile building by the river was now condos. The grocery store where families used to cash payroll checks had become a title office. And the Mill Road duplexes, where Lena had rented for 4 years under a different last name, sat between all of it like a mistake nobody wanted to admit they had made. Lena lay still for a moment and listened. One knock in the wall. Then another. In the next room, her niece, Tessa, slept curled under a faded quilt with one foot hanging out, a blue ribbon tied around the wrist of her stuffed bear. Tessa was 6, small for her age, and already too good at waking quietly when adults argued outside. Lena had promised her sister she would keep the child safe. That promise had outlived the sister. On the kitchen table sat 3 things that did not belong together: an overdue electric bill, a notice from Clayton County Code Enforcement, and a black leather case wrapped with red evidence tape. Lena kept the case under a flour tin most days, not because anyone in the apartment would understand it, but because Tessa had once asked if it was treasure. Lena had told her no. That was not entirely true. The case had been issued 9 years earlier, when Lena still wore pressed suits, kept federal credentials in an inside pocket, and believed a clean investigation could stop a dirty system before it hurt the wrong person. She had been an undercover civil rights investigator for the Department of Justice, assigned to patterns no local office wanted named out loud: selective enforcement, courthouse intimidation, housing removals that always seemed to begin on the same side of town. Then her last case in Clayton County went bad. A sealed record vanished. A witness recanted. A man who had agreed to testify lost his job and his home in the same week. Lena was ordered out before she could finish, and the case was sealed so tightly that even saying the file number aloud in the wrong room could cost her more than pride. She left with one authorized item: the sealed federal badge from the operation, locked and taped as evidence until the investigation could be reopened. For years, it felt less like a badge than a weight. Now, the same pattern had found Mill Road. Lena slid from bed, wrapped a sweater over her nightshirt, and checked the window. Across the street, a white county truck idled beside the curb. Its headlights were off. A man in a tan jacket took pictures of the duplexes, one porch at a time. Not repairs, not inspections. Evidence. Lena's hand went to the court notice. Public Health and Safety hearing. Friday. Temporary relocation order may be entered. Friday meant 6 families could be out before the weekend. It meant Tessa's school bus would stop coming to the corner. It meant the little row of homes where widows traded casseroles and night shift parents watched each other's kids would become empty enough for someone else's plan. A kettle hissed on the stove before Lena realized she had lit it. Tessa padded into the kitchen, rubbing one eye. Is the wall mad again? It's just old pipes. Old things get blamed a lot, Tessa said, with the seriousness of a child repeating something she had heard from a grown woman. Lena almost smiled. Eat your oatmeal. At 7:30, Lena walked Tessa to McKinley Elementary. then caught the county bus toward the courthouse annex. She wore plain shoes, a brown coat, and no makeup except the kind that hid sleep. In her tote bag were cleaning gloves, a cheap lunch, and the court notice folded into quarters. Her job was temporary record support at the courthouse annex 3 days a week, hired through a staffing agency that did not ask many questions as long as she alphabetized fast and kept her head down. Most people there thought she was poor because poor was what they expected to see when a woman came in on the bus and counted coins for coffee. They did not notice how she read docket numbers upside down. They did not notice how she remembered which files had fresh staples and which had been opened after hours. They did not notice that every time Sheriff Wade Harlan's name appeared on a housing enforcement memo, Lena wrote the date on a grocery receipt and tucked it into a brown envelope behind her stove. Harlan was not just the county sheriff. He was the man on campaign signs outside churches, the man who hosted turkey drives at Thanksgiving and stood behind judges at ribbon cuttings, the man who smiled for photographs while deputies cleared people from porches. Lena had watched him for years without letting him see her watching. At the annex that morning, Ruth Bell was at the front desk with a scarf tied neatly over her gray hair. Ruth had worked county records long enough to know which smiles meant trouble. "You hear about Friday?" Ruth asked softly. "I got the notice." Ruth pushed a file cart closer to hide their conversation. They moved the hearing from the small room to courtroom 2. More cameras. "Commissioner wants it to look transparent." "Transparent," Lena said. Ruth's mouth tightened. "That's the word they're using." A printer coughed behind them. Lena reached for the warm pages and saw the heading before she meant to. Mill Road Enforcement Summary. Below it, in clean official language, the county claimed repeated resident noncompliance, refusal of inspection access, and dangerous neglect. Lena knew every porch on that block. Mrs. Alvarez had reported the soft floor by her sink twice. Mr. Jameson had called about the wiring in June. Lena herself had filed 3 maintenance requests under the name Lena Porter, the identity she had used since taking custody of Tessa. None of those complaints appeared in the summary, but one line did. Filed per directive. W. Harlan. Lena kept her face neutral. She had survived offices by never letting her eyes give away the moment a lie became useful. Ruth saw enough anyway. "There's more," she whispered. "Old basement archive got pulled yesterday. Same shelf your sealed file used to be on." Lena's fingers paused on the paper. "Who pulled it?" Ruth glanced toward the hallway camera. "Sheriff's office request." The deadline had just become something sharper. By Friday, the county would not only sign families out of their homes, someone might bury the last official trace of why Mill Road mattered, and why Harlan had been afraid of that neighborhood for almost a decade. The black case waited beneath it. She set it on the table, unwrapped only the outer cloth, and studied the red tape across the seam. Her name was not visible. Her title was not visible. Nothing about it could save her if she used it wrong. But if she did nothing, 6 families would pay for her silence. Lena opened the brown envelope of notes she had kept for years. On top was one supporting record she had managed to preserve. A stamped maintenance complaint from Mill Road, dated before the county ever called the homes unsafe, signed in at the courthouse and never entered into the public file. 1 factual proof, 1 sealed truth. Lena slid both into her tote bag. Then she tied Tessa's blue ribbon around the handle, not as decoration, but as a reminder. By Friday morning, she would go to the hearing as the woman everyone thought they could ignore. And if Harlan tried to erase Mill Road in public, she would make him do it on the record. By Wednesday, the hearing had become the biggest thing in Alder Creek. Not because 6 families were about to lose their homes, because Sheriff Wade Harlan had made sure the town understood it as something else. On local radio, he called Mill Road a neglected corridor. At the Rotary breakfast, he called the hearing a chance to put safety over sentiment. By noon, a photo of him shaking hands with Commissioner Dale Voss was posted on the county page, both men standing in front of the courthouse flag like they had already rescued someone. Harlan knew how to dress control up as protection. He had a square jaw, a silver sheriff's badge, and a way of lowering his voice that made people feel included in a secret. He knew which church pews gave him visibility. He knew which reporters wanted a quote before the hearing. He knew that when poor tenants pushed back, the county could call them emotional, difficult, or non-compliant. That was his favorite word, non-compliant. It sounded official enough to make suffering look like a behavior problem. Inside the courthouse annex, Lena heard that word 3 times before lunch. A landlord used it while leaning on Ruth Bell's counter. A deputy used it while joking about folks who want free housing. Then Harlan himself said it from the record's doorway, his hat tucked under his arm, his boots clean enough to show he had not been anywhere near the duplexes. Lena was filing old civil dockets in the side room when his voice carried in. "Ruth, I need Friday's packet clean. No loose complaints, no handwritten notes, no community theater." Ruth kept her tone flat. "The packet is prepared by the clerk's office and reviewed for order. That's Judge Cross's word." Harlan gave a short laugh. "Maribel likes order, too." Lena slid one folder into place and kept her shoulders loose. In the reflection of the file cabinet, she could see him near the counter, blocking the public window with his body. Deputy Carl Nix stood beside him, younger, red-faced, and eager in the way men get when power lets them skip being smart. Nix noticed Lena first. "Is she supposed to be back there?" Ruth answered before Lena had to. "Temporary record support." Harlan's attention moved over Lena like a quick inspection of property. Her plain coat hung on the chair. Her shoes were scuffed. Her tote bag sat tucked beside the desk, blue ribbon visible on the handle. "You live over there, don't you?" he asked. Lena placed another file in the drawer. "Over where?" "Mill Road." Ruth's pen stopped. Harlan smiled. "No shame in it. Just means you understand why the county has to act. Some places get so bad decent people stop fighting for them." Lena faced him then. "Some places get bad because decent people filed complaints no one answered." The room cooled by a few degrees. Deputy Nix snorted. "You got an opinion for a temp." "She has a point," Ruth said. Harlan did not raise his voice. That was what made him dangerous. Everybody's got a point when somebody else has to pay for the repair. He came farther into the side room, eyes grazing the rows of boxes. Friday is not a tenant meeting. It's a court hearing. Judge Cross will decide whether those homes are a safety risk. Anyone disrupting that process can be removed. Lena heard the warning beneath the policy. Removed from the room. Removed from the record. Removed from the town if necessary. She had met men like Harlan in county offices across the South, the Midwest, the Gulf Coast. They never saw themselves as cruel. Cruelty sounded too personal. They saw themselves as managers of inconvenience, protectors of comfort, men chosen by decent taxpayers to keep certain troubles at a distance. But Harlan's private fear was not disorder. It was exposure. Lena saw it when Ruth opened a gray archive box and Harlan's hand twitched toward the lid. She saw it when the label on the box showed an old civil rights case prefix and he suddenly stopped joking. She saw it in the way he positioned himself between the box and Deputy Nix, as if even his own man could not be trusted to read too much. "Those archives should be downstairs," Harlan said. Ruth adjusted her glasses. "Clerk's office requested cross-checking for Friday." "Which clerk?" "Me." His smile thinned. "Careful, Ruth. Retirement's close. Would hate for anyone to question your handling of sealed materials." The words landed hard because everyone knew Ruth had stayed after hours for decades keeping files alive that others preferred to lose. She had a widowed daughter in Macon and a pension she could not risk. Lena wanted to speak. She did not. Not yet. That was the hardest part of undercover work after you stopped doing it officially. You learned the cost of moving too early. A raised voice could satisfy pride and destroy evidence. A public accusation could give a guilty man time to clean the room. So Lena swallowed the anger and reached for the next folder. Harlan saw the restraint and mistook it for fear. "Good," he said. "At least somebody here knows her place." Ruth's face changed, but Lena only closed the drawer. That afternoon, the small injustice became a policy. A notice appeared on the courthouse doors. Only parties recognized by the court may address the hearing. All other attendees shall remain seated. It sounded neutral. It was not. Mill Road tenants had no attorney. The landlords had one. The county had Harlan. The commissioner had a reserved row. The families had folding chairs and fear. When Lena read the notice, Tessa was beside her, holding a library book against her chest. Lena had picked her up from school and brought her to the courthouse because the sitter's son had a fever. "Does that mean you can't talk?" Tessa asked. "It means they're hoping I won't." "Can Ruth talk? Maybe." Tessa thought about that. "Then you should stand near Ruth." Lena touched the ribbon on the tote handle. "That's a good plan." From the hallway, Deputy Nix watched them with a paper cup in his hand. Harlan came out of the stairwell a moment later, speaking quietly to Denise Harper, the county housing liaison, a woman in a navy blazer who had built her career on being pleasant in rooms where unpleasant things were approved. Harper carried the official Mill Road packet against her chest. Lena caught only part of what Harlan said. Keep the mothers emotional. Keep the record technical. Harper's answer was too soft to hear, but she nodded. Then the packet shifted in her arms and a page slipped loose, drifting to the floor near the bench. Tessa reached it first. She picked it up and handed it to Lena before anyone could stop her. It was only visible for 3 seconds, but 3 seconds was enough. At the bottom of the page was a notation Lena had not seen in years. Restricted review, authorized under sealed federal matter. Clayton County, 2017. Her old case. Tied to Friday's hearing. Harlan crossed the hall quickly. "That page isn't public." Lena gave it back with no resistance. "Then it shouldn't be loose." His eyes narrowed. For one brief moment, recognition almost formed. Not of her face, of her tone. Someone who once let silence do the work. Harper broke in with a polite cough. "Miss Porter, if you're a resident, you may submit a written statement. My name is Lena Mercer." Harlan's expression changed so slightly that only someone trained to watch would have caught it. Then he smiled again. "Well," he said, "Friday should be interesting." That night, Lena sat at the kitchen table while Tessa slept with the blue ribbon back on her bear. The sealed case lay beside the stamped maintenance complaint, both under the weak yellow light. Lena could no longer pretend this was only about housing. Harlan was not just clearing Mill Road. He was clearing the last living edge of a federal investigation he thought had died quietly 9 years ago. And now he knew the woman in apartment 3B was not as invisible as she looked. Thursday morning, the first dismissal came wrapped in courtesy. Denise Harper met Lena outside the annex with a clipboard, a county badge, and the kind of smile that had learned to survive bad orders. "Ms. Mercer," Harper said, "I reviewed your request to speak at tomorrow's hearing." Lena shifted her tote bag higher on her shoulder. The sealed case was inside, padded between a sweater and Tessa's library book. "And written statements are more appropriate. Appropriate for who?" Harper glanced toward the security camera above the door. For the process. Lena had heard that word used as a broom. Process could sweep away a woman, a block, a record, a body, if the people in charge repeated it softly enough. "I submitted one," Lena said, 3 pages, with the stamped complaint attached. Harper's smile faltered. That attachment created some confusion. It was stamped by this courthouse. It was not in the active packet. That's the confusion. For a moment, Harper's face showed the tired person beneath the blazer. Then the official returned. "Sheriff Harlan believes the complaint may have been misfiled." Lena let the sentence sit there. A maintenance complaint filed before the county declared the homes unsafe had not been misfiled. It had been made inconvenient. Harper lowered her voice. "I am trying to help you avoid making this worse for yourself. By staying quiet. By staying housed long enough to qualify for relocation assistance." There it was, practical threat, dressed as advice. Lena understood the offer. If she behaved, the county might place her and Tessa in a motel for 2 weeks, maybe a list, maybe a voucher that expired before anyone accepted it. If she pushed, they could say she obstructed inspection, violated lease terms, failed to cooperate. Poor people were never only punished once. They were punished on paper until the punishment looked like their own fault. "I don't need assistance to disappear," Lena said. "I need the record corrected." Harper swallowed. "Then bring your papers tomorrow. But I can't promise you'll be allowed to speak." By noon, the second humiliation arrived. A deputy taped an orange notice to every Mill Road door. It warned residents not to remove fixtures, block inspectors, or interfere with county personnel. It read like an accusation before a verdict. Neighbors came out one by one. Mrs. Alvarez crossed herself. Mr. Jameson cursed under his breath. 2 teenage boys filmed the deputy until he threatened to seize their phones. Tessa stood behind Lena's leg and read the biggest words she knew. "Emergency," she whispered. "Unsafe." Deputy Nix pressed Lena's notice flat with the heel of his hand. "Sheriff says you're taking the bus to court tomorrow," he said. "I didn't know the sheriff managed bus schedules. He manages order." Lena peeled the notice from the door before the adhesive set. "Then he should start with repairs." Nix's face reddened. "You think you're clever." "No. I think I'm late for work." He leaned close enough for Tessa to hide her face in Lena's coat. Work might not want trouble either. That line mattered. At the annex, the staffing supervisor called Lena into a supply room that smelled of toner and dust. She would not meet Lena's eyes. "We got a complaint." "From who?" "It doesn't say. It says." The supervisor exhaled. "The sheriff's office reported that you accessed restricted housing files outside your assignment. I filed documents I was given. They want you off records duty pending review. Pending review meant no hours. No hours meant no rent. No rent meant Harlan would not need a housing order to remove her." Lena asked for the complaint in writing. The supervisor blinked. "Why?" "Because a verbal accusation is gossip. A written accusation is evidence." For the first time that day, someone else's pen hesitated. The supervisor gave her a copy. Lena folded it carefully and placed it in her tote, separate from the stamped maintenance complaint. She would not use it as proof in the hearing. Too many papers would muddy the truth, but it told her Harlan was accelerating. At 3, Ruth found Lena in the courthouse stairwell. "You need to listen to me," Ruth said. "I am." Ruth's hands were shaking. "The archive shelf is empty." Lena's breath shortened, but only once. "Which shelf?" "The old civil rights box, the gray one. Gone. Pulled by the sheriff. No request logged. A person could fake a file. A person could bury a complaint. But an unlogged removal of sealed archive material was not sloppiness. It was fear moving in a hurry." Ruth pressed a small envelope into Lena's hand. "I made 1 copy of the docket index years ago. I should have told you." Lena did not open it. "Ruth, if this puts your pension at risk—" "My pension isn't worth watching him do this twice." The words landed between them. Twice. Ruth knew more than she had said. Before Lena could ask, footsteps sounded above them. Ruth straightened, wiped her face, and moved away with the practiced speed of a woman who had survived government buildings by never being caught in the wrong emotion. Lena slipped the envelope into her coat. She did not need the index for the reveal. The sealed case would carry the emotional weight, and the stamped complaint would confirm the pattern. But Ruth's envelope told her one thing clearly. If Harlan had started stealing archive boxes, tomorrow would not be a hearing. It would be a cleanup. That evening, rain came hard over Mill Road. Water ran through the cracked gutter outside Lena's kitchen window and fell in ropes past the glass. Tessa colored at the table with her tongue caught between her teeth. She had drawn their duplex with a blue roof, though the real roof was brown and tired. "Can we take my bear if we have to leave?" Tessa asked. "We're not leaving tomorrow. Grown-ups keep saying maybe. I'm saying no." Tessa studied her drawing. Can you say no to a sheriff? Lena's hand paused on the kettle. That was the question the whole county was built to answer one way. She came to the table and knelt beside the child. You can say no to anyone who is doing wrong. You just have to know what kind of no you're saying. What kind are you saying? The kind with proof. Tessa seemed satisfied by that. She tied the blue ribbon around Lena's tote handle again, tighter than before. So you remember. After Tessa fell asleep, Lena made her quiet, active choice. She did not call a reporter. She did not post online. She did not march to the sheriff's office demanding answers that would only warn him. She sat at the kitchen table and prepared the proof for one room, one moment, one record that could not be erased by rumor. The sealed case went into the inside pocket of her brown coat. The stamped maintenance complaint went into a plain folder. Then Lena called a number she had not dialed in 9 years. The line rang 4 times. A man answered with caution in his voice. Federal Civil Rights Division. Lena gave her old operation name, her former identification code, and the phrase that would force a supervisor to listen. There was a pause. Then the man said, "Ms. Mercer, where are you?" "Alder Creek, Georgia. Clayton County Courthouse tomorrow morning. Are you in immediate danger?" Lena watched rain hit the dark window. In the reflection, she could see the coat hanging on the chair, its pocket weighted by the case. "Not yet," she said. "But Sheriff Wade Harlan is about to create a public record. I need someone there to witness it." The man's voice changed. "Do not open sealed evidence without authorization. I won't. Do not identify yourself unless necessary." "I know. Yes. If Harlan is tied to that sealed matter, he may try to remove you before you speak." Lena thought of the orange notices, the missing archive box, the complaint against her job, and Tessa's bear on the pillow in the next room. "Then he'll have to do it in front of witnesses," she said. On Friday morning, Lena dressed like the woman Harlan expected to defeat. Plain coat, worn shoes, no visible authority. The blue ribbon hung from her tote handle soft as a child's promise. At the bus stop, Mrs. Alvarez touched Lena's sleeve. "Are you scared?" Lena watched the courthouse dome rising pale against the wet sky. "Yes," she said. Then she boarded anyway. Courtroom 2 was already crowded when Lena arrived. The landlords sat together in the front row with polished shoes and paper folders. Commissioner Voss stood near the aisle shaking hands. Denise Harper checked names off a list. Reporters gathered close enough to film grief, but not close enough to ask who had caused it. Mill Road families filled the back rows. Tessa sat beside Ruth Bell on a hallway bench because Lena did not want her inside when strangers discussed their home as if it were a rotten board to be removed. The blue ribbon was in Tessa's hair now, tied carefully by Lena's hands at the bus stop. At 9 o'clock, Judge Maribel Cross took the bench. She was known in Alder Creek as fair when fairness was easy and cautious when it was not. Her courtroom had dark wood, bright flags, and one old ceiling fan that clicked above the silence. "This is a hearing on the county's emergency relocation request concerning the Mill Road properties," Judge Cross said. "The court will hear from the county, the property owners, and any recognized parties." Recognized. There it was again. County Attorney Paul Renner began with photographs. Sagging porch rail, cracked siding, water stains. He spoke of risk, liability, resident safety, and the need for immediate action before Friday evening storms. He did not speak of unanswered complaints. He did not speak of rent collected on unrepaired homes. He did not speak of the county trucks that had photographed the houses before any inspector knocked. When Renner finished, the landlord's attorney agreed with him completely, which told the room more than either man intended. Judge Cross asked if any resident representative had filed a statement. Lena rose. Harlan was standing near the courtroom doors with his thumbs hooked in his belt. Deputy Nix stood behind him. The sheriff saw Lena before the judge did. "Your Honor," Lena said, "Lena Mercer, resident of Mill Road. I filed a written statement with a stamped maintenance complaint attached. I'm requesting to address the missing repair history before any order is entered." Renner frowned at his packet. Harper stiffened in the second row. Judge Cross adjusted her glasses. Ms. Mercer, I do not see you listed as counsel or authorized representative. I'm not counsel. I'm a tenant whose complaint was omitted. Harlan gave a low cough. Your Honor, this is exactly the disruption we were warned about. Lena kept her folder flat against her chest. The complaint was accepted by this courthouse before the county alleged resident noncompliance. Renner said, if such a document exists, it was not part of the certified packet. It exists. A murmur moved through the back rows. Judge Cross hesitated. That hesitation was small, but Harlan recognized danger in it. If Lena got 3 uninterrupted minutes, the hearing could stop being a ceremony and become a record. So he moved Ms. Mercer, Harlan said, you were instructed on courtroom procedure. I'm requesting permission from the court, and I'm maintaining order for the court. Judge Cross said, Sheriff, one moment. But Harlan was already walking. He reached Lena's row and lowered his voice just enough to make the people nearby lean in. Sit down. No. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. A few phones rose. Harlan's ears reddened. Remove her. Deputy Nix came around the back row, but Lena did not make him touch her. She moved into the aisle with the folder still in her hand. I will leave the well if the judge orders it, she said. Not you. That was the moment Harlan chose pride over caution. He gripped her arm. Chairs scraped. Mrs. Alvarez said, Sheriff, don't. Mr. Jameson half rose before another resident pulled him back. The judge called for order, but the sound had already broken loose. Harlan dragged Lena through the courtroom doors into the hallway, where Tessa jumped up from the bench. Mama! The cry cut through every adult excuse in the building. Ruth put an arm around the child, but Tessa struggled toward Lena. Reporters followed. The commissioner followed. Harper came out with one hand over her mouth. A dozen witnesses filled the hallway within seconds. Harlan pushed Lena toward the wall and told her she was done. Then the black case slipped from inside her coat. It struck the marble and slid beneath the bench. Ruth's breath caught. Judge Cross appeared in the doorway just as Harlan picked up the sealed case. The red tape across it was visible now. So was the federal evidence marking printed in small block letters along the edge. Harlan's expression hardened. He had expected poverty, anger, maybe a forged letter from some activist group. He had not expected an artifact from a case he believed had been buried. Give it back, Lena said. He held it higher. What is this? Sealed evidence. From who? You already know enough not to open it. The line shifted the hallway. It was not an explanation. It was a test. Harlan failed it in front of everyone. He called it fake. He called her unstable. He said people like her brought props when facts ran out. Then he peeled at the red tape with his thumb while the camera lights blinked and the judge watched from the doorway. Lena felt the old wound open, not from fear of him, but from the memory of every person who had trusted a system that later misplaced them. Her sister, who had died believing Lena's old work still meant something. The Mill Road father who lost his job after signing a statement. The neighbors who filed complaints into a courthouse that swallowed paper. For 1 second, Lena was back in a federal office 9 years earlier, being told to stand down because the timing was sensitive. Stand down meant someone else suffered quietly. She would not do it again. Harlan shoved her shoulder against the wall hard enough to rattle the framed map. Tessa screamed. That sound almost broke Lena. Her folder bent in her hand. The stamped complaint inside creased down the middle. She wanted to take Tessa and run, not because she was weak, but because every decent instinct in her body told her to shield the child from this room. Then Ruth did something small and brave. She knelt, took Tessa's hands, and said, "Watch your aunt, not your mama. Your aunt." The word passed through the hallway almost unnoticed, but Harlan heard it. His eyes snapped to Lena. "Your name isn't Porter," he said. Lena lifted her chin. "No. A smile began at one corner of his mouth, ugly with recognition and relief at the same time. He thought he had found the lie that would undo her. "Your Honor," Harlan called, "this woman is here under a false identity. She's misrepresented herself to the court, accessed county records under another name, and interfered with an emergency safety hearing. I'm placing her under detention pending review." Deputy Nix reached for his cuffs. Judge Cross said, "Sheriff, wait." But Harlan was past waiting. He wanted Lena humiliated, frightened, legally tangled, and removed before anyone could ask why a sealed federal item had made his hands shake. He put the case under one arm and took the stamped complaint folder from her hand. That crossed the final line. "You can put cuffs on me, Sheriff. You cannot take evidence from a federal witness." The hallway changed again. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a tightening, like a locked door had clicked open somewhere deeper in the building. Harlan froze. Deputy Nix's hand stopped near the cuff pouch. Judge Cross stared at Lena, then at the sealed case. From the far end of the hallway, the security officer at the front entrance stepped aside. Two men in dark suits came through the scanner without removing their coats. One was older, black, with a trimmed gray beard. The other carried a slim leather folder and walked with the calm pace of someone who did not need permission to enter. Ruth saw them and stood. Lena did not smile. She did not move toward them. She simply held out her empty hand, palm up, toward Harlan. "Now," she said, "we can finish this on the record." The older man in the dark suit stopped 10 feet from Harlan. "Sheriff," he said, "remove your hand from that case." Harlan did not obey. Men like him obeyed uniforms above them, not suits that arrived without noise. "And you are?" he asked. "Marcus Vale, Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice." The title moved through the hallway faster than sound should have. A reporter's phone rose higher. Commissioner Voss stopped smiling. Denise Harper backed toward the courtroom wall as if distance could make her less visible. Harlan gave a short laugh. "Well, Mr. Vale, you're interrupting a county court proceeding." Vale opened his leather folder and showed identification just long enough for Judge Cross to see it. "I'm here because a sealed federal evidence item connected to an inactive civil rights matter has been handled by unauthorized county personnel." Harlan lifted the black case. "This. She dropped it in my courthouse." Lena said, "You took it from the floor and tried to open it after being warned." "That's not true." Ruth Bell spoke before fear could talk her out of it. "It is." All eyes shifted to her. Ruth's voice trembled, but it held. "I saw him pick it up. Ms. Mercer told him not to open it." He kept peeling at the tape. Harlan's glare landed on Ruth like a thrown object. "Careful." Marcus Vale did not raise his voice. "Do not intimidate a witness in my presence." The hallway tightened around that sentence. Harlan tried to recover with a smile. "This is getting theatrical. We have a housing safety hearing, and now a temp worker with a fake name is claiming federal protection because she brought a mystery box to court." Lena extended her hand again. "Give it back." Harlan held it away. "Not until somebody explains why you're using two names." Lena's eyes moved to Judge Cross. "Your Honor, my legal name is Lena Mercer." Lena Porter was a protective identity approved during a federal investigation and later used informally after I took custody of my niece. I am not asking the court to accept my word. I'm asking the court to place this exchange on the record before the emergency order is signed. Judge Cross, pale now, said to the court reporter behind her, "Resume recording." A soft click came from inside the courtroom. That little sound changed everything. Harlan heard it too. "Your Honor," he said, "this woman is manipulating the court." "No," Lena said, "I'm correcting it." Marcus Vale nodded once to the younger agent. The man moved beside Harlan, not touching him, but close enough to make the choice clear. Harlan handed the case to Vale as if it bored him. Vale inspected the tape. "Seal is disturbed but not broken." Then he passed it to Lena. She held it with both hands. For years, the sealed federal badge had been a burden she kept hidden beneath flour tins, sweaters, and ordinary fear. In that hallway, with Tessa clutching Ruth's skirt and half the town watching, it became what it had always been meant to be. Not a weapon, a witness. Lena faced the judge. This case contains my federal credentials from Operation Lantern, a civil rights investigation into selective housing enforcement and courthouse intimidation in Clayton County. It was sealed in 2017 after local witness protection failed, and the investigation was suspended. Harlan scoffed. Convenient story. Lena did not answer him. She turned the case so the red evidence tape faced the judge and the phones. The seal lists the federal evidence number in the authorizing unit. Mr. Vale can verify chain of custody. But the badge itself is the central proof of why I was here before, why Sheriff Harlan recognized what he was holding, and why he tried to remove me before the Mill Road record could be challenged. The room understood before Harlan did. It was not just that Lena had authority once, it was that Harlan had reacted like a man who knew the sealed past had returned. Judge Cross said, "Mr. Vale, can you confirm?" Vale checked the number against a document in his folder. "Yes, Your Honor. The item corresponds to a sealed federal civil rights operation involving Clayton County housing enforcement. Ms. Mercer was an authorized undercover investigator assigned to that matter." Harlan's face darkened. "Assigned, past tense. She has no authority here." "That's right," Lena said. The honesty surprised him. "I'm not here to arrest you. I'm not here to outrank the court. I'm here as a tenant, a guardian, and a witness to a pattern you thought poverty would hide." She opened her plain folder. Harlan jumped on it. "More props." "One page," Lena said. She held up the stamped maintenance complaint. The paper was creased from his grip, but the courthouse stamp was still clear. "This is the supporting factual proof. A Mill Road repair complaint filed before the county's non-compliance claim. Stamped by this courthouse, missing from the certified packet." Judge Cross leaned forward. "Bring it here." Lena did not hand it to Harlan. She did not hand it to Renner. She walked past the sheriff, past the cameras, and gave it directly to the clerk at the courtroom door. Ruth said, "I remember that stamp." Harlan snapped, "You remember every piece of paper now?" Ruth flinched, then straightened. "I remember because I stamped it, and because it disappeared from the system 2 days later." The county attorney closed his packet. That was the first honest thing he had done all morning. Judge Cross examined the page. "Mr. Renner, why is this not in the hearing file?" Renner's throat worked. "Your Honor, I received the packet from the housing liaison and sheriff's office." Harper whispered, "I didn't remove anything." Harlan pointed toward Lena. "This is a stunt. She's a disgruntled former investigator with a personal grudge. That complaint proves nothing about the whole block." Lena's voice stayed even. "It proves the county had notice before blaming residents for neglect. It proves the packet was incomplete. And your reaction proves you knew the old investigation was connected. My reaction proves I don't let strangers hijack court. I'm not a stranger to you." That line landed clean. Harlan's mouth opened, then closed. Lena took one step closer, stopping outside his reach. "In 2017, I interviewed you for 42 minutes in a conference room downstairs. You denied directing deputies to pressure tenants who filed repair complaints. You denied knowing which archive shelf held the witness logs. You denied ever using court security to keep residents from speaking." Harlan's eyes flicked toward the basement stairwell. A tiny movement, but every camera caught it. Lena saw it too. You remembered the badge because you remembered the case, and today, in front of witnesses, you repeated the same pattern. He tried to laugh again. It came out dry. "You can't prove intent with a speech." "No," Lena said. "That's why I waited for your conduct." The hallway went completely still. This was her decisive moment, and she did not spend it shouting. She simply drew the boundary everyone else had been afraid to name. I am requesting that the court suspend the Mill Road order, preserve the full hearing record, and refer Sheriff Harlan's handling of federal evidence and witness intimidation for review. Judge Cross sat with the stamped complaint in one hand and the verified federal evidence number in the other. Her caution had nowhere left to hide. "The emergency order is not signed," she said. "This hearing is suspended pending review of the omitted complaint and the completeness of the county packet." A sound rose from the Mill Road families, not celebration, but breath returning. Judge Cross continued, "Sheriff Harlan, you are relieved from security duties in this matter. Deputy Nix, step back. Mr. Vale, the court will coordinate preservation of the sealed item and any related record through appropriate channels." Harlan's hand went to his belt. "You can't relieve an elected sheriff in his own courthouse." "I can relieve you from my courtroom," Judge Cross said. "And I just did." Commissioner Voss moved toward the exit, but a reporter blocked him with a question. Harper sat down hard on the bench. Renner asked for a recess in a voice that had lost all polish. Marcus Vale spoke quietly to Harlan. "Sheriff, federal investigators will request preservation of records from your office today. Do not delete, move, alter, or instruct anyone else to alter any material related to Mill Road or the 2017 sealed matter." Harlan's anger finally lost its mask. "You people come in here and act like you own the place." Lena answered before Vale could. "No, we came because you acted like the people didn't." For 16 years he had protected one thing above all else, the public image of a sheriff who kept order. Not justice, not truth, order. Now the cameras had recorded him dragging a tenant from court, disturbing sealed federal evidence, threatening a clerk, and watching his housing order freeze before the ink touched paper. He had not been arrested. He had not been marched away in cuffs for a perfect ending. Real consequences did not arrive that clean. But his power had cracked in the one place he could not repair by Monday morning. On the record. Lena walked back to Tessa and knelt. The child touched the blue ribbon in her hair. "Did your proof work?" Lena glanced at the black case now held by Marcus Vale under chain of custody and at the stamped complaint resting beside the judge's bench. "Yes," she said. "It started. The Mill Road order stayed unsigned that Friday. That did not fix the pipes. It did not patch the roofs. It did not erase years of being called difficult for asking that rent include a safe floor and working heat. But it stopped the trucks." By evening, Judge Cross had issued a written hold on any relocation action until the full repair history could be reviewed. Outside counsel was brought in to examine the county packet. Marcus Vale's office sent a preservation notice to the Sheriff's Department, the housing liaison, and the clerk's archive. No one was marched away that day. That mattered, because the truth in Alder Creek had been buried through official language, not movie violence. It had been hidden in missing pages, restricted speaking rules, sealed shelves, and the quiet punishment of people with no spare money to fight back. So the consequences came the same way, on paper. By Monday, Sheriff Wade Harlan announced he was temporarily stepping back from courthouse security assignments pending review. By Wednesday, the county commission froze the Mill Road enforcement plan. Before the end of the month, the state opened its own inquiry into missing courthouse records and improper sheriff's office involvement in housing proceedings. Harlan still appeared on television once, standing beside his attorney, saying he had only been maintaining order. But the clip everyone kept replaying was not his statement. It was Lena's voice in the hallway. "No. We came because you acted like the people didn't." That line traveled farther than she wanted it to. People sent it to each other. A church printed it in a bulletin. Someone painted it on a piece of plywood and leaned it against the Mill Road fence until rain softened the edges. Lena did not attend every meeting that followed. She attended the ones that mattered. She sat beside Ruth Bell when Ruth gave a sworn statement about the missing complaint and the archive shelf. She watched Denise Harper admit, carefully and with a lawyer present, that she had relied on summaries prepared by the sheriff's office instead of verifying original repair records. She heard County Attorney Renner say the words incomplete packet as if each syllable hurt. The stamped maintenance complaint became the page that forced the rest of the file open. After that, more complaints surfaced. Mrs. Alvarez had kept copies in a Bible cover. Mr. Jameson had saved certified mail receipts in a coffee can. Other tenants found texts, photos, and work orders that proved the county had known far more than it had claimed. Lena did not make herself the hero of those rooms. She knew better. People who survive being erased do not need someone else standing in front of them forever. They need the door held open long enough to walk through with their own proof. 3 weeks later, the Mill Road families received written protection from removal while repairs were ordered under independent inspection. The landlords were required to fix the properties or face civil penalties. The county approved temporary rent support for residents during repairs, not as charity, but as a corrective measure tied to the failed process. Lena's staffing agency offered her job back. She declined. Ruth laughed when she heard that. Good. You alphabetized too fast anyway. They were sitting on the courthouse steps with paper cups of coffee, the kind that tasted burned no matter how much cream went in. Ruth's pension remained intact. More than that, she had been asked to help reconstruct the archive policy she had once been warned not to question. "What will you do?" Ruth asked. Lena watched people pass through the courthouse doors. Some hurried, some carried envelopes. Some held children by the hand. I don't know yet. That's allowed. Lena smiled faintly. I'm learning. The sealed badge did not come home with her. It returned to federal custody, logged properly this time. Its tape replaced under witness, its chain restored. Lena expected to feel hollow without it. Instead, when Marcus Vale handed her the receipt, she felt lighter than she had in years. The badge had never been her courage. It had only been proof that her courage had once had a name. The blue ribbon stayed. Tessa wore it to school the next Monday, tied around one braid. When another child asked why her aunt had been on the news, Tessa told him, because she used her quiet voice. That night, Lena found the ribbon on the kitchen table beside Tessa's homework. It was wrinkled from the day, one end stained with purple marker. Lena smoothed it with her thumb and tied it around the handle of a new folder. Inside were not secrets, just records, repair schedules, inspection dates, tenant meeting notes, copies for neighbors who did not own printers. A simple system, public and ordinary, built so no one had to depend on one hidden woman with one sealed case ever again. Months later, Harlan's name came down from the courthouse security office. His badge was not ripped from him in a dramatic scene. It was suspended pending formal proceedings, then his authority was narrowed while investigations continued. The county never used the word disgrace in its statements. It did not have to. Everyone in Alder Creek had seen what he did when a poor woman asked to be heard. Mill Road changed slowly. That was the honest version. The duplexes still creaked, the gutters still needed work. But contractors came. Inspectors returned calls. The families stayed through the winter. On warm evenings, chairs appeared on porches again, and children drew chalk houses on the sidewalk with roofs in colors no real roof had ever been. One Saturday, Lena and Tessa walked past the courthouse after buying groceries. The building looked the same from the outside. White columns, stone steps, flag moving in the wind. A place designed to make ordinary people feel small. Tessa slipped her hand into Lena's. Are you still scared of it? Lena considered lying, the gentle kind adults use when children ask direct questions. Then she squeezed the small hand in hers. A little. Tessa nodded like that made sense. But you go anyway. Yes, Lena said. That's the part that matters. They crossed the square as the afternoon light settled over Alder Creek, and for once Lena did not feel the old badge pulling at her coat. She felt the ribbon brushing her wrist, soft and bright, tied to a folder full of records anyone could read. Justice had not arrived like thunder. It had arrived like a woman refusing to leave the record blank. And sometimes, That is how a whole room finally learns the difference between order and truth. If this story made you think about who gets believed and who gets silenced until they bring proof, tell me in the comments what you would have done in that hallway. And if you want more stories about quiet people who refuse to be erased, subscribe and stay close.